is to begin. A thousand banners waving in the sky. Here comes our Lazio, the eagle starts to fly.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile, with me again Alison McKenzie. Alistair, it has been a tough weekend, but overall we should be happy about Lazio performance and the results from the other clubs involved in the Champions League race.
Yeah, spot on. We've just started recording a few minutes after the Milan derby's finished, so I don't know. Like we were just saying before we came on air, it's a bit of a shame in a way that Inter snatched the win at the end there, because a draw would have at least seen us gain ground on both of the Milan teams. But even so, we're going to talk about Lazio's great win over Parma, which was another, impressive away win, another clean sheet, and at the same time, like you say, Roma have dropped points, and now Milan have dropped points, and Fiorentina as well. So, yeah, all in all, it's been a very successful weekend.
Yes, and to be fair, before this weekend, people would have think that it would be a positive weekend for Roma, for example, was playing at home against Spal, while Lazio was playing away against Parma. That is probably one of the most tough team to play against now in this moment. Instead, Lazio won, Roma lost. I don't know. We're gonna ask our listener what they were hoping for the Milan derby. Obviously, for us, it was clear that a draw would have been better. But if someone believes that, for example, Milan is not a threat, then maybe seeing Milan win tonight, it would be an advantage. But as we said since the beginning of the season, Inter is going to be a threat for Lazio for the Champions League spot. Honestly, at the beginning of the season, I was thinking that maybe Inter could be the team to challenge Juve this season, but it looks like Napoli is a better team, is probably even better managed. Ancelotti is proving to be a better coach than Spalletti. So, we were third before tonight. Now with the Inter victory, things changes, but it's still a very good position to be, Alistair, considering especially that Lazio have played already against Juventus, Napoli, Roma and Fiorentina. We are talking about 4 teams that are in the top 6 spots. So the calendar for Lazio have been very tough, and consider that Roma and Inter still have to play against these top teams like Juventus and Napoli. So it looks positive.
Yeah, lots of positive stuff to pick up on from what you've just said. Also it's the fact that we've got a 100% winning record now, still against any team that finished outside of the top 4 last season. And, there are obviously negatives that we've picked up on before from the defeats against Juve, Napoli and Roma, but at the same time, the fact that Lazio are winning all of these games against teams outside of that kind of Champions League bracket is a massive improvement on last season. And I said after this game that I think that shows an improved mentality. But the next step really is to get points from these big games. And yeah, you mentioned there that Inter have been performing below expectations, given that they were being talked about as a possible Scudetto contender before the season started. But I think this game next weekend or next Monday is a huge test now for Lazio, because the one thing that's clear is that this team is capable of getting these results in a way that they didn't last season against teams like Parma and the lower teams in the league. But when it's come to the big nights, they've not shown up yet. So this Inter game, there's a lot riding on it. Obviously, it's an opportunity to leapfrog them in the table into third place. But on top of that, it's an opportunity to kind of silence those critics who are saying that Lazio can't turn up when it matters.
Yes, it's going to be a very complicated match, an important match next Monday. And it's going to be complicated because, as we said as well last week, now Lazio is having a lot of complicated match. Let's not forget that Thursday there's a key Europe League match against Olympique Marseille. It's going to be fundamental for Lazio for the Europe League. And then Monday, luckily, so an extra day to recover. There is Lazio Inter, another very important match this time for Serie A. Luckily, Inter is playing Champions League this week. So they will be focused again on other. They won't be having the week of rest like Fiorentina had against us 2 weeks ago. So
no, and they're going. Sorry, it's worth mentioning as well. They're going to play Barcelona at the new camp as well. So it's going to be a lot of running around for them.
Yeah, without Messi though, but it's still, it's gonna be a complicated match. Especially, it looks like Nainggolan got injured today, so he could be out for a while. So obviously we're not talking about Messi. It's still Nainggolan, but it should be a key player for them. So we're gonna see how long it's gonna be out. But it's not gonna be easy for Lazio and Alistair. I thought that. I don't know if it was the first time that it was obvious, but I thought looking Lazio starting 11 today, it was clear that Simone Inzaghi was also thinking about Thursday, putting starting Patrick instead of Marusic, thinking that Patrick is not able to play in Europe League, Bassa is disqualified, and Marusic is the only option Lazio have there. So I thought that was the reason why Patrick played today against Parma, and I think Inzaghi has to think that way.
Well, with Patrick, I think supposedly Marisic picked up a minor injury problem on international duty while he was with Montenegro. And I don't think it's anything serious, but apparently it was enough for Inzaghi to not want to risk him for the game today. And yeah, like you say, it handed Patrick an opportunity instead. I don't think otherwise there were any real examples of him looking towards Marseille. I think that was his full strength team, or at least what he sees as being his full strength team. But one thing's for sure after today is that he's going to have to think twice about whether that really is his strongest 11 now, because one thing that was clear from today was that the game changed after Inzaghi made those substitutions of bringing on Berisha and Tucu Correa, so two of the summer signings, who we've not really seen an awful lot of yet, but they were both excellent. And credit to Inzaghi for bringing them on at the right time and seeing them go on and get the result. But Berisha looks like a real player. This was, I suppose, our best, the most we've seen of him yet. He won the penalty that Immobile scored, and then obviously Correa got the second right at the end as well. But yeah, those two players are both really pushing for a starting place now, and I expect they both will be starting on Thursday. But the interesting thing will be really when that Inter game comes around, because if the likes of Berisha and Correa have another great game on Thursday against Marseille, I don't see how they couldn't be in the team against Inter. And the team against Inter will undoubtedly be what Inzaghi regards as his top 11, given the standing of that match.
Yep. I said it, that Berisha for me was going to be a great player for Lazio. I thought he was very useful for this team. I was a little bit surprised, Alistair. I don't know if you were the same, seeing Lucas Leiva coming off for him. We said that he can play in different position, as well as probably Lucas Leiva position, but I saw him more effective playing more closer near the opposite goal, playing a little bit like Milinkovic Savic, or eventually like a trequartista as Luis Alberto. So it was curious to see him entering for Lucas Leiva. It was clear the message of Simone Inzaghi. It's time for Push to finish this game off after Lazio was dominating but without creating too many chances. So, I thought it was a signal, but I want to see him playing more closer to Ciro Immobile.
Yeah, well, I think he's quite good in that role. Inzaghi did say after the game that the reason he took off Lucas and Alberto as well was because they're both on yellow cards, and particularly with Lucas, the fact that Parma were quite happy to just sit in their own half and wait to counter-attack. Lucas could find himself in positions where he was exposed defensively and might end up committing a foul that could get him sent off. So it was a kind of preventative measure as well, that substitution. But yeah, I think he's got a bit of everything. Berisha, he's strong, but he's technical, and he's Milinkovic Savic, I suppose, is the obvious comparison because he's a player that kind of blends physicality with real technique, and he looks like he could play in a range of positions really. But perhaps that kind of Metzala role would be the best one for him in this team, and it's certainly the one that we expected him to fulfill. It's just such a we talked about this already during the international break when we got questions about Moja and Cataldi, but there's just so much competition for places in that midfield that it was always going to be hard. And when he got the injury, unfortunately in the summer, it was going to make things even harder for him. But I've been really impressed by the impact he's made so quickly because given how long he was out, which has been, about 2 months out with injury, when you consider that on top of the fact that he's at a brand new team in a new league playing with a completely new group of players, I think it's outstanding, really, that he's already managing to impress people. Because, although Salzburg did knock us out, as I'm sure we remember, apart from those of us who've blanked it from our memories, despite that, there's no doubt that moving to Serie A from the Austrian league is a big step up for a player. So I think we can be really encouraged from what we've seen from him so far. And I think he will be a really important player, like you say.
And the fact that he played a lot with his national team last week was very helpful to get fit. After you don't play a lot in your squad, he was able to play with the national team. I don't know if he played. Don't remember if he played 90 minutes. I think 70, 75 last time. So he was able to get fit, and I think he's a complete player. He's physical. He's a fighter. He has great ball skills, so he's gonna be very useful for Lazio, and he showed it already. So a great signing. Talking about Correa, I wonder if he's gonna be more dangerous coming in the last 30 minutes of a match because he's so speedy and finding defenders that are maybe already tired after a long match. This is gonna help him, or seeing also how Luis Alberto is playing, if starting from the beginning would be better for him. Inzaghi, for example, today after the match said, in the first half, we used Luis Alberto because we wanted to play the ball, and then when Parma was tired, I put in Correa because I knew we could have spaces for him to run, and he's very dangerous when he has plenty of space. So, don't know. Do you think this is just an excuse to not hammer Luis Alberto, or it's a tactic that Inzaghi really is thinking about?
Yeah, it's as soon as I read those comments, I thought of what I've been saying on our last podcast about the comparisons with Lukaku, and it's it's a bit worrying now, in that Inzaghi sees him as somebody who can be an impact sub, because of his speed and his ability on the ball, his dribbling ability, that he can make the most of tiring defenses. But I don't know. I think we've seen enough from him in the games he's had so far to definitely suggest that he's got more to his game than that. I do think he's still trying to work out the role tactically, and he does drift wide more often than not because those are the spaces, the positions he's more comfortable in naturally. Whereas Alberto does stick to the middle of the pitch more. But yeah, I mean, like you say, Alberto's performance today, again, despite him going back to the blonde hair, despite that, he still has failed to turn around his form. It was another disappointing game from him, I thought. And I mean, like I said at the very start, I think if Correa is going to come off the bench and do that, if he's going to play like he did against Udinese, and if he can carry that into the Europa League on Thursday against Marseille and make an impact there, then there's really very few arguments left to be picking Alberto ahead of him.
Well, he cannot play Thursday because he got a red card against Frankfurt.
Of course.
In fact, Alistair, I was a little bit...
Speaking of games I've blanked from my memory.
Yeah, you made the right decision there. But I was a little bit surprised to not see him start, knowing that he cannot play next Thursday. And also considering, as we said in the last podcast, that Luis Alberto spent all last week trying to recover from a unknown injury with his... he didn't train with the rest of the team. I was a little bit surprised to see him start. So, again, Inzaghi didn't mention nothing about this problem Luis Alberto's having. I don't know. He said, I saw Luis Alberto training very well this week. I mean, those quotes was a little bit surprising. He was injured. He didn't train last week with the rest of the group. He trained this week, I think, from Tuesday. And suddenly he's in better shape than Correa and Caicedo.
Yeah, and if I was Felipe Caicedo, to be honest, I'd be a bit frustrated at this point because Caicedo has, without doubt, improved this season. He's been much more effective, and his partnership with Immobile, which rarely was successful last season, if ever, it is actually looking like it could go somewhere now. And he must be wondering really what he can do to get the game at this point, because if Alberto, like you say, isn't training, didn't take part in the friendly against the Primavera team in which Caicedo scored, I don't know, I feel like Caicedo's got every right to be a bit upset about this preferential treatment that Alberto's getting, despite the evidence of him not being at the top of his game. So, yeah, I mean, with that in mind about Correa, which I'd completely forgotten about being suspended on Thursday, I mean, I think you've got to give a chance to Caicedo at this point, because I think he's earned it.
Yeah, I think he's starting Thursday. The biggest question is, will he start near Ciro Immobile or in place of Ciro Immobile Thursday? Because let's not forget that even Ciro needs to rest before the Inter match, maybe, even though he didn't play with the national team. But, maybe still you prefer to have your men fresh for Monday.
Yeah, to be honest, I'd like to see them start together because I wasn't very pleased with Ciro's performance today, to be honest. I thought, after the whole thing with Italy over the international break, he needed a really good game, and don't get me wrong, he did get a goal and an assist today, so you can't really complain all too much about his performance. But I think before then, and that all happened in the last 10 minutes, he didn't look too sharp, missed a couple of chances, and just, his touch was very clumsy at times, and he was letting the ball get away from him. So anyway, I do think that the statistics of the match that show the goal and the assist actually hide what wasn't an entirely convincing performance in my mind. So I'd quite like to see him play alongside Caicedo on Thursday to try and sharpen him up a bit for Inter, and also to give another 90 minutes or so to that partnership, because I think that partnership is looking quite promising. But on top of that as well, I just don't think, I mean, we've been over this time and again, but I don't think Caicedo can lead that line by himself. The other option really with Correa suspended is Caicedo playing up front with Alberto behind him, and I just don't think that's a very good way of lining this team up.
Or with Rossi.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
It's going to be really complicated to see him.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you were saying, we have to be honest. Lazio wasn't playing a great match before the changes Inzaghi made with Berisha and Correa. But one thing, Alistair, we saw this weekend that except Napoli, all the top teams have struggled after the international break. The fact that you have a lot of players that come back maybe only Wednesday or some Thursday if they play far away, maybe in Asia or in South America, it's not easy to prepare a match. Maybe players come back and they're tired or they have little injury, etc. And you're not able to prepare them from the match for the next match. And the performance obviously cannot be amazing. And we saw Juventus against Genoa. We saw Roma against Spal. We have to say the same about Lazio. Lazio didn't play great. And I think this is due to the international break as well.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't really agree with the criticism that's been out there today about Lazio's performance, because when you look at it, yeah, the first half wasn't great by any means, but in the second half, it came out and created 3 good chances almost immediately with Immobile, Alberto, and Milinkovic. They're absolutely dominating possession. Strakosha didn't have a save to make in the whole game, albeit Acerbi made an excellent intervention at one point. But Parma rarely threatened, and there was only one team really looking to win the game. And in the end, it's a clean sheet and a 2-0 win. And yes, it took a while to get to that point, but I think that shows a real maturity in this team. And this is what I said at full time and on Twitter, basically, that Lazio are showing greater maturity than they did last season. We already knew that, but I thought this game was a great example of it, because if things really weren't going their way for that first 80 minutes, and they'd been knocking on the door against the Parma team that weren't too interested in attacking and were struggling to break through, things weren't really coming off for them, but they stayed patient. They remained organised and compact. They didn't overcommit to the attacks to actually let Parma through on the counter-attack, which was their game plan. So they snuffled out the counter-attacks very well. They were patient enough to continue building their attacking phases in the way that Inzaghi wanted them to, and in the end they reaped the rewards of that. So I think it was a much more mature and structured performance from Lazio today than we would have seen perhaps last season, when people are harking back now to the days when we were blowing teams away by 3 or 4 goals. But this is functional football, and Inzaghi said himself the league is tougher this year than it was last year, which I agree with. And I don't think people can really complain about a game like today where Lazio were always the better team and have ended up getting a very, comfortable margin of victory in the end, even if it did take a while to come.
Yes, I agree that Lazio have changed compared to last year. Maybe even because Luis Alberto is not performing as well as last year, it's less spectacular. But as well, for the moment, we are not losing those type of match that last year cost us a lot. Let's not forget the draw against Spal at the beginning of the season, losing against Genoa, and so on. So these are very important matches to win, and I think you can feel that Lazio is different. There's more balance in the team compared to last year. A clean sheet today against Parma, it's a very good signal, especially as you mentioned, Strakosha didn't do nothing today. And if you remember last year, I don't remember a match when you say, today Strakosha didn't do nothing. No, he was always forced to do a great save, while this year it's not always the case. So yes, it's a different Lazio, even if the players are pretty much the same. It's different. They were pointing out that Lazio scored few goals than last year and allowed just 1 less compared to last year, but you can see that generally everything it's a different team. Now the next step for me is proving in tough matches, because you can say that against Juventus and Napoli you can expect to lose, but seeing Roma performance, it's it's hard to understand how Lazio played that bad in the derby, seeing what Roma was facing.
Yeah, I mean the derby just seemed to be a massive division and motivation between the two teams. Lazio didn't look nearly as motivated as Roma, and perhaps they were a bit overconfident in a way because of the fact that they came into that game in such better form than Roma were. But that can't be said with the Inter game. You know, it's also, I mean, historically, Lazio's record in the derby has been very bad, and that's going to weigh on the players, I think, in recent derbies. But Inter is a fixture not so much. You know, the game at the end of last season notwithstanding, this is a team that Lazio haven't necessarily had terrible struggles with. I think it's a good opportunity to turn that side of things around. I mean, it's, you know, I see a comment we've got here on Twitter from Rami Algendi saying, we're winning games, we aren't playing beautiful football at all like last season. But the first part is surely more important than the second part. I mean, Inter finished ahead of us and are now in the Champions League. Who played more beautiful football last season? Lazio, without doubt, played more beautiful football than Inter last season, and we end up in the Europa League. It's more important to win games, and the fact that we're managing to win these games with these performances is more encouraging than anything else. I mean, the reason that we were entertainers last season a lot of the time was that we were committing so many numbers forward. And that's part of the reason we were defensively so suspect. We were getting caught out on the counter-attack all the time and had fewer numbers than we needed to defend those counter-attacks. So I don't think that's something to be criticising. You know, it's winning games is more important than anything else. I mean, that should be obvious, but for some reason it's not at the moment.
And especially, I think I said it in the podcast, last year, if Lazio wasn't playing great football, it wasn't able to win matches, which a big team cannot allow this, because you know that in a season you're going to have moments where your players are not in top of the form, or maybe everything is going wrong, and still you have to win, because if you want to compete for the Champions League spot, you have to get points every single week. You cannot allow to lose too many matches, and if you can win, if you're able to win only when you outperform the other team, then it's going to be difficult to reach the Champions League. While now we're seeing Lazio maybe not playing that well, but able to get those points, those wins that are really important. And if like today, Lazio is able to win tough teams like Parma, especially away, without making Strakosha do nothing, that's even a more important signal, because we always said that one of the weaknesses of this team was the defense. But even if we improve there, then Lazio is improving, it's getting tougher to beat, and that's an important signal.
Absolutely it is. I mean, it's more important than anything. I mean, look, last season this team shattered all sorts of records, points totals, goals scored, games won, and we still had people complaining every single week about the defending and this and that. And so, unless you're, I think you've said before, Vittorio, unless you're supporting one of the super clubs in the world, if you're supporting a Man City or a Barcelona, then maybe you can complain about not combining incredible football with winning every week. I mean, this is Lazio, Let's be realistic here. This is good. To be winning these games this regularly is a good thing. I mean, very conveniently on my Twitter feed just now, a stats come up from Lazio page saying 18 points after 9 rounds. That's only 3 times in the history of the era of having 3 points for a win have Lazio done better than that. One of them was last season, and then in 2010-11 with Eddie Rea, and then in the title-winning season with Eriksson. So, this isn't bad going here. This is pretty good stuff.
Yes, and I'm showing the table now. Juventus, we played against. Napoli, we played against. Inter, we're playing Monday. Lazio is 4th. Fiorentina, we played against. Sampdoria, we have to play, if I'm not wrong. And Roma, we played against. So, and Sassuolo as well, we played against. So, of the top 8, we're going to miss just Sampdoria. So, the rest of the fixture should be really positive for Lazio. And so, being 4th now, considering the calendar, it's really encouraging. Obviously, it doesn't mean that Lazio is going to beat all the team ranked below. I mean, you would wish for, but if Juventus is not able to win against Genoa at home, this tells you that it's not possible to believe that you're going to win all the matches. But obviously, it's encouraging to see Lazio rank 4th with 18 points at this point of the season after playing all these tough matches.
I thought you were going to say if Juventus failed to beat Genoa at home, that goes to show that we're better than Juventus because we beat Genoa 4-1 at home.
Yeah, I'm going to add it next podcast.
Yeah, no, you're right. And actually, if you look at the table as well, there's actually a bit of a gap opening up now. I mean, it's said generally that after you start to see the way that the table will end up after 10 rounds, usually in a season, and so you're starting to see the teams that were the early pace setters, the surprise ones, like Spal and Sassuolo, dropping further down the league. And there's a 4-point gap now between Lazio in 4th and Sampdoria in 5th. And yes, there is the caveat of Sampdoria having a game in hand, which they're going to play tomorrow night. But even so, that does include a 4-point lead over Fiorentina and Roma and a 6-point lead over Milan, who also have a game in hand. But even if they win that, Lazio will still be 3 points ahead of them. So, yeah, it's a good position to be in, and that's what we need to be thinking about now. It's no longer the very early start of the season, where we are now almost a quarter of the way through. So to be in the top 4 is now an objective to just stick to. This is where we need to be staying for the rest of the season, and that's quite an exciting thing when you think about it in those terms, that it's actually already Lazio's to lose. If we just continue with strong form for the rest of the season, we will be in the Champions League.
And as we mentioned about Lazio Inter next Sunday, if I'm not wrong, there is Milan Sampdoria and Napoli Roma. They cannot win all of them, so some of them are going to drop points, and if Lazio takes points against Inter, the table will look even better for Lazio, because if Milan or Sampdoria loses or draw and Lazio win, then the gap would be wider. Same thing, Roma playing at Napoli. It could be really and it could really be important next weekend for Lazio for the table. So again, it's really positive, and there's a lot of confidence, without forgetting that Lazio played a terrible derby. Imagine where we would be if Lazio would have won the derby.
Yeah, and even thinking about the terms in which people are talking about the teams ahead of us at the moment, Napoli and Inter, they're very much spoken about in on the TV shows here and in the papers and so on as being the kind of perennial Champions League top 3 contenders, which Lazio aren't really discussed in that frame as often. I mean, Lazio are always underdogs, and that's fine. I think that actually suits the team quite well. But the point is, I mean, if you compare the performance so far, Lazio match up to this Inter team that was dubbed the anti-Juve at the start of the season. We've won the same amount of games as them. We've scored the same amount of goals as them. So to have a 1-point gap with that Inter team, I think if you'd asked us at the start of the season, we would have taken that. And even that Napoli team, that you're talking about, job Ancelotti's done, which I agree with. I think he's been excellent and doing well in the Champions League now as well. But even so, Napoli have only won one more game than Lazio after 9 games. So it's not like these teams are vastly outperforming Lazio, which is an impressive thing to say because, each of these games, these 6 matches that Lazio have won individually, there have been criticisms of, and that's fine. That's what we're here to do, is talk about these performances and talk about what can be improved on and compliment the things that have done well. But actually, the fact that Lazio won all these games is a rarity among these top teams because look at Napoli, they got beat 3-0 by Sampdoria. You look at Inter, they were beaten by Parma already. You look at Roma, they've just lost to Spal. Fiorentina today were held by Cagliari. I mean, what Lazio are doing in not just avoiding defeats in these games, but winning every single one of these games, really, you shouldn't underestimate how impressive an achievement that is.
No, absolutely. The probably at the moment, I would say Lazio is the team with more balance. Maybe they're not beating Juventus, but they're winning the match they have to win. While with Inter or Roma, for example, you never know what you're going to get. And Inter have been very lucky tonight. They scored the 92nd minute with an embarrassing performance of Donnarumma. So they have probably a better team, better options than Simone Inzaghi, but they're not playing at the level they should be playing. So obviously Inzaghi is very good to take advantage of this, and I think it's going to be a fight. Lazio have to keep it up. You have to see even how Inzaghi is going to play with the Europe League. You have to have a turnover, so I'm expecting some changes next Thursday, even though this is a very important match for Lazio. Winning against Olympique Marseille away, it would be fundamental, the key to pass the Europe League group, which obviously is very important for the team.
Yeah, I mean, when we had the group stage draw, immediately when we were talking about the draw, we picked out Marseille and this double header that's coming up as being the 2 important games to really decide, probably who's going to win this group. That's changed a bit now that Frankfurt have absolutely hammered us, and the group's wide open, really. But yeah, I mean, Marseille, they've not got off to the best start in the group. They were beaten by Frankfurt in that opening game as well, and then there was that incredible comeback Aquile had in the last game as well. So in the Europa League so far, they've really got a point to prove on Thursday in front of their own fans, and that won't be an easy place to go. I mean, they've had 1 home game so far, but it was behind closed doors, so there weren't actually any fans in the stadium as far as I remember. So this will be the first time this season that the Velodrome will, which is a huge stadium. It's not far off the Olimpico. I think it's about 65,000, something like that. So it'll be the first chance for the fans to kind of go and watch the team in Europe. So I'm expecting a pretty intense atmosphere, which obviously Frankfurt was as well. And on top of that, in the league, they've been doing quite well. I was just having a look at their result from tonight because I knew that they were playing Nice, and they've gone and won that as well.
Yeah,
so
they won it.
3 wins in their last 4 games. Looking at it now, so they're 5th in Liga. I think I'm right in saying that. Yeah, so it's going to be tough for
4th.
a number of reasons. 4th, okay, that'll be after the game tonight. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I'm expecting a really tough game, but things can't go much worse than they went in Germany. So
yeah,
at least that's one thing.
Yeah, they are 4th. They have the same points with Montpellier, that is 3rd, but I think goal difference they are 4th at the moment. But yeah, it's gonna be a tough match. The Curva is gonna be close against Lazio, but we know that Marseille are organizing are lowering the prices of all the other sector, so that the ultras will be able to get to the match in other stands. So I think it's gonna be not easy to play there, but again, if you want to win in Europe, you have to do it against this tough environment. And I think the team has to prove to be able to compete and win against tough matches, against tough teams, like Olympique Marseille. One thing we introduced this week in the podcast was this audio message. We post a link before. You can join our WhatsApp group and leave a short 30-second message that we are going to listen and produce in our podcast and reply. So if you're interested, we already post the link for the next podcast. If you want to do it, you're more than welcome. Obviously, we ask for short message. Otherwise, we won't be able to play them in the podcast or do an extra podcast just for that. We're going to think about it. But, we have the first one. I'm going to play it. Hopefully everything is going to work perfectly. And then, Alistair, you can reply.
Okay.
Okay, I think it didn't work. What can it be? I'm gonna play it again and see if we can fix it. Give me a second. Alistair, you're still there?
I'm still here. I'm awaiting this with bated breath.
Alistair, you're still there, sorry?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna try to play it again. Let's see if it goes. No, it doesn't go. I'm sorry. I have to change settings. So basically, Rami Algendi is asking if this is the last chance for Luis Alberto. Do you think after this performance he's done?
Well, I don't think he's done by any means. I mean, there's certainly a very close relationship between him and Simone Inzaghi, and Inzaghi's stuck up for him all season. And then on top of that, we have to remember that there is this injury problem, this fitness issue that, has been, as we were talking about in the last show, has been kept quite quiet and stopped him from training over the international break for a while. But I do think for now, like I said earlier on, I think with Correa playing the way he is and Caicedo playing the way he is, those two have more of a claim to a starting place than Alberto does at the moment. So I think for the time being, to be honest, it makes sense to me to play Caicedo in Europe on Thursday alongside Ciro, and then have Correa start against Inter, and maybe to be able to bring Alberto off the bench and put some pressure on him to bring his A game and making an impact in a short period of time. I don't know, maybe that would work. Maybe that would motivate him. It's hard to say, but yeah, I think he's had a lot of chances now. Inzaghi's been incredibly patient with him and keeps picking him, keeps putting him in the team for big games, and unfortunately he keeps underperforming. So for the time being, at least, I think it is time to have a look at some of the other guys in the squad, given that we've got this depth.
Yeah, you have to see how big this injury is that he's been coping this beginning of the season. Because if he didn't train last week, then there's probably something. And I really don't understand why Inzaghi is not saying nothing about it, and especially why Luis Alberto is starting if he's injured or not completely fit. But moving on, Lukaku was back with the squad. He's been called for Parma. I was a little bit surprised. Obviously, I didn't think he had a chance to play, but obviously he was with the team, so he could have come in eventually. But the thing is, Basta now is out of the squad for the Serie A. I was thinking, okay, but now on the right side, Inzaghi hasn't got that many options again, because you only have Marusic and Patrick for the Serie A. Do you think he's planning maybe to move Durmisi when he come back on the other side?
Well, you say that, but beforehand he only had Durmisi and Lulic on the left. So, I mean, he was always a player down, I suppose. And I think the plan B there is Cáceres, because we saw that already in week one against Napoli, that when the Durmisi-Lulic duo were both unavailable, it was Cáceres who was moved into that role. And actually, I think Cáceres, given that he's played on the right-hand side of a back four for Uruguay, for example, at the World Cup, he would be, I would expect, more comfortable playing on the right-hand side as a wing-back than on the left. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that being experimented with again, because I think in terms of the back three, Cáceres hasn't been altogether convincing in those positions so far this season. And Inzaghi seems to now be favouring Wallace and Luis Felipe ahead of him. So I think it would make more sense for him to persist with alternating between Wallace and Felipe in the back three, and trying out Cáceres as the right wing back if if Patrick and Marusic aren't performing very well.
You didn't mention Bastos. You are considering completely out of the equation?
As you well know, I consider Bastos an alternative to Ciro Immobile, not to the defence.
Okay. Anyway.
Well, yeah, Bastos as well, obviously. But I mean, the reason I don't mention him is because I was saying that Inzaghi is, it's clear that Inzaghi is favouring Felipe and Wallace because those are the players he's picking. He's not really picking Bastos for any games. I mean, he might occasionally play in the Europa League, but he's quite far down the pecking order at the moment.
Yeah, which, especially looking at the last Wallace performance, is a little bit surprising. Anyway, I was happy to see Ramos starting again. I think he's the future of this team, and probably already he deserved to be the starter. So, and maybe the fact that Lazio didn't give any chance to Parma is because he was playing near Radu and Acerbi. He gave extra confidence, I think, to the squad. But yeah, I was encouraged by the performance of Patrick today. When he has the chance, he always give everything he has. The problem is everything he has is not enough in some occasion.
Yeah, and I don't think that should really surprise anyone by now. I was quite surprised by some of the hostility being directed towards Patrick during the game on social media today. It's people were making him out to be some sort of disaster, whereas I actually thought that he got himself into a lot of good positions. One thing he does do very well is makes good runs, and is quite, in an attacking sense, is quite positionally astute. And he had the best chance of the first half by getting in at the back post and forcing that save out of Sepe. He pulled a really dangerous cross across the box during the second half. So I think in an attacking sense, he's fine. But I mean, like you say, he's just not a particularly talented footballer. So he's never going to set the world alight. I think he can do a job there, and he can do it fine, and he'll be a kind of 6 out of 10 player most weeks. But I don't think he's a disaster or a liability in the way that some people were making him out to be.
No. And again, he was very close to score. I think he had, in the last 3 years with Lazio, so many chances. He was really, really close to score, but still wasn't able to score in Serie A, I presume, if I'm not wrong. So
yeah, but he always scores in friendly games, doesn't he? He's scoring hat tricks and things in pre-season. So
yeah, that's true. It's incredible. But as I said at the beginning, I understand why Patrick played today, considering the importance of next Thursday match. But for example, if I would see Patrick start next Monday, then I would be a little bit worried. But there's a chance it happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I said at the start, I think this injury niggle to Marseille will be a big reason for his inclusion today. So, I don't think it's serious enough to really put him in doubt for the Inter game. So, I would still expect Marseille to be back in the team for that. So yeah, I mean, I think it'll be more interesting to see on Thursday what happens in that position. In that, if Marseille isn't quite ready yet, would that be a point at which Inzaghi looks to try and use Cáceres in that position? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, there's obviously in these games the temptation to experiment or tinker with the team, but when you're talking about playing away to Marseille in a game that could be crucial to actually getting through the group stages, particularly now that we've lost to Frankfurt, I don't think you can afford to take too many gambles with the lineup, really.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have to think about giving a rest to players, considering you are playing every 3 days. So it's not easy. It's not a tough. It's not an easy solution for Inzaghi to pick all the time the right players. For example, maybe today he could have started Correa instead of Luis Alberto, especially thinking of that the Argentinian cannot play Thursday. But Lazio still was able to win. And it was an important win for Lazio for the Serie A, especially after what happened to Roma on Saturday. I think it's going to be a big fight. And, the thing is, fighting for the Champions League, every match important. We keep saying that this against Parma, it's an important victory. Obviously it is. But then next Monday you have Lazio Inter. And again, we're talking about a key match, obviously. And then there's another one that it's a key match. So, if you want to fight for the Champions League, you have to try to win all these matches without thinking you're playing against Spal or Inter or Fiorentina. And at the moment, this is making the difference for Lazio, because Lazio is able to win against even the easy matches, even the easy teams. While Roma and Inter are losing points, and Fiorentina especially losing points they should have been dropping. So this is the difference, but it would be really important to beat Inter next Monday.
Yeah, it'd be huge, and I think it would do a lot. I think I said already, I think that the team's mentality is already improved, and they seem a more mature team now. But at the same time, I do think getting a win against this Inter team at the Olimpico after what happened at the end of last season would help, take another step to putting that whole ordeal behind this team. I do think that they probably already have, but at the same time, it wouldn't do any harm. And on top of that, it would, fill them with a bit more belief that they can get results in these big games, and also consolidate this Lazio team as a big Champions League contender this season.
Yep, I agree. It's going to be important, even though I believe that, for example, having Berisha on the pitch is he's a fighter, so he's going to help the team in big matches, and so I think he can be really important for that. Anyway, Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here. I'm sorry for the audio message. I'm going to fix it for next Thursday, as we're going to do our podcast just after Lazio Olympique Marseille. Are you going to the match, Alistair?
Yes, I will be.
Okay, good.
Just before we finish, I just wanted to say as well, there was some very sad news after the game today that one of the Lazio fans who travelled to the game actually died outside the stadium afterwards. So I think we should pass on our best wishes about that. And also just a mention to the fans who did travel, because there were 4,000 of them today, which is actually supposedly the biggest travelling support Lazio have had at a game for 8 years. So that's really incredible. And obviously there was a great support at Empoli as well. And if they can keep that up throughout the season, I'm sure it'll be a huge help.
Yeah, very, very sad news. It looks like the supporter was going back to his car and had a heart attack, and there was nothing to do. So obviously it's a very sad news. And talking about the fans, it's strange. We cannot fill the stadium for the derby, but we are able to send 4,000 fans to Parma and Udinese as well. There were a lot of fans, Lazio fans as well. So it's curious, this thing, but
it makes no sense.
No,
let's be
absolutely,
honest.
absolutely. I don't know. Maybe people was thinking about doing a weekend at Parma. That is a very nice town. I don't know. Anyway, Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here, and we're gonna talk next Thursday after Lazio Olympique Marseille Lazio. Sorry. As usual, you can follow us on Spreaker, on Twitter, on Facebook, and if you like the show and want to support us, there's our Patreon page, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Thank you for listening tonight. Thanks, Alistair, for joining me, and we're going to talk next Thursday after Olympique Marseille Lazio.